Hi, I'm author Maggie Gates, and today we're discussing my next book, a morally gray small town romance called Good Hands. I cannot wait for you to meet Jude and Amelia.
Welcome to Love Letters and Books, a podcast for anyone who loves a good story. This is a soft space to explore romance in books where no topic is too taboo. I'm your host, Casey, and this week I am sitting down with author Maggie Gates to talk about her new novel, Good Hands. And we're going to explore the terrifying tenderness of being someone's first choice after feeling like an afterthought. We're also talking about what it means to live your whole life as the responsible one, the fixer, the person who quietly cleans up everyone else's messes. We're getting into that hollow, familiar ache of realizing you're always there for other people and almost never truly held in return, and why it can feel so deeply uncomfortable to be prioritized, helped, or taken care of when self-reliance has become your armor. Good Hands asks the question, how do you learn to receive when all you know how to do is give? If you've ever felt like everyone else's safety net, but nobody's first choice, this book and episode is for you. Maggie, welcome back to the Love Letters and Books podcast. I am so glad you're here.
Thank you for having me again. This is my favorite podcast. Don't tell the others, but for sure my favorite.
Best opening to a podcast ever. So thank you so much. But I am really excited to see you for a few reasons. Obviously, we are here to talk about a very specific book. But the last two times I've had you on the podcast, we were talking about the Griffith Brothers series, and they were being re-released and available in bookstores. There were additional chapters, and we were sort of touching on a catalog that people really loved and were familiar with. But today, you are bringing us into a different part of the universe with Good Hands. So before anything else, Maggie, tell us about this book.
So, Good Hands is the unlikely romance between a casino bouncer who lives a little bit of a morally gray life and a statistics professor who is card counting to get her brother out of debt. She doesn't realize it, but she is counting cards at the very casino who is owned by the bad guy that her brother has gotten involved with. And so she's really stealing from Peter to pay Paul. And that doesn't work out well for her. So when Jude, our very grumpy bouncer, gets orders to kill her, he kidnaps her instead, and they go on the run to bring down the house for good.
So there's a lot to unpack just from
There
that
is.
alone. And you barely touched on so many of the elements of the story, right? Because there's a lot of surprise throughout this book. But let's touch on one of the things you mentioned, and it was paying someone else's debt, which is a really interesting theme. It's actually come up on the podcast a few times lately. And thinking about needing to kind of save someone else or jump in and do something to help them, that dynamic, let's just start there because that's not the romance. That's the brother-sister dynamic in the book. Tell us a little bit about that because that's kind of a complicated relationship right there.
It is. So Amelia has a twin brother named Joel, and he never grew up. She kind of fell into a very cliche eldest daughter role where she's always cleaning up his messes and, looking after him, even as they're nearing their 30s. And that just doesn't stop because he's very comfortable always having her to look out for him. And she kind of realizes, like, well, this is a problem. He needs to grow up, but also I have to help him. And right now I'm the only person who can. And so I think it was really, really fun and interesting to sort of dive into that of feeling guilty and responsible for somebody, but also resenting them. And I think watching Amelia work through that resentment, work through her anger, there were a lot of days throughout the book where she's like, oh my gosh, I miss him. I love him. I'm broken over the state of our relationship as siblings, but I'm also angry at him and I'm hurt. And he doesn't see how much this has hurt me. And it's a lot to unpack. Healing is never linear. And so we watch her kind of ping pong back and forth between those two things.
Yeah. Well, one of the words that you just used was comfort and the idea of discomfort in these types of relationships. And so I sat down, opened good hands, and I was like, oh, I'm going to love this. It's going to be amazing. And then it was just like a 1-2 punch within the first few pages where you were like describing how Amelia feels. And I was like, well, that's very spot on. And what I'm alluding to is that feeling of not being first on the list for anyone, for feeling like, oh, I pour a lot of energy out, but I'm really not getting it back. And you had mentioned about people wanting community and what that means. It means you have to be a community member, like you have to show up and give as well as receive. And before you and I hit record, we were talking about this very specific discomfort that comes up in this book, and it's of being prioritized, being first on someone's list after a lifetime of being the last one on everyone's list or just the one they come to for resources or depend on. So take us into Amelia's world where she goes from being an afterthought to being the only thought.
I think I loved, immediately when we were kind of going through the rundown of like what we're going to talk about. When you called it discomfort, that was the best way to describe it because that's immediately how I feel anytime somebody's like, "Oh, can I bring you dinner? Can I do this for you?" And I'm like, "Nope, I got it. I'm good. I can take care of myself. I'm fine." Because that's kind of the way that it always has been. And then when you meet your person or when you find that community, it takes a lot of self-work to lay down your pride and your self-reliance because I feel like we crave the ability to lean on somebody, whether it's romantically, platonically, within your family, just having those people around you that you can trust. We crave it, but we deny ourselves the ability to take help when it's offered. And I think, a lot of times it's a way that we protect ourselves. It's a defense mechanism because if we don't let people help us, they can't hurt us. They can't take that help away. And then, we're left feeling empty and broken or vulnerable. And I think that with Jude and Amelia specifically, he is the one person that she is not supposed to trust. And yet he is the only person who's showing up for her
Yeah.
time and time again. And so, she goes through this struggle, and there's a moment where he's just like, please let me help you. I want to. And that is something that I've had to work on in my own life because I like to be very self reliant. I don't like asking for help. And when I kind of step back and I think about how I want to be that person for others, how much it fulfills me to help them. And so sometimes, you know, yes, it's a pride issue that I think a lot of us have to deal with to accept that help, but also it's loving somebody else by letting them love you.
Well, for anyone who just dropped into our therapy session today, let's go a little bit deeper with that because you really, wow, you really brought a lot of topics up. And, you know, one of them is like you're saying, like allowing someone to do that, really being able to sit through that discomfort and what it brings up in us, right? Because I feel like one of the words you used when we were describing the relationship with Amelia and Joel is resentment. And so when we're feeling resentment, when we're pouring out of an empty cup, we can kind of distort that in our own minds. Like if someone does something for us, like, oh, what does that say about me? Or like they're gonna feel that way about me. And I'll just have nothing. And then that will be fine. And then no one will have any feelings about me. It's like it's just this spiral that if you're listening and you're nodding along, I just want you to know you're not alone because Maggie and I are nodding along as well. And it's such a just like a beautiful invitation, right? And that's very much what it felt like when I was reading it. It's not like yes, in some way he's like strong arming her. Like there's a little element of kidnapping going on, but I'm not going to overlook that, but I don't know, it's like this beautiful invitation to sort of like let your guard down and this won't be used against you and I want to do these things and I'm choosing to help you and what a beautiful yet painful thing that is. So when you're walking the line between like receiving and discomfort, I mean, it was just such a beautiful story and it touched on that. And like as I'm saying, like, wow, when you open the book with how she was feeling, and I was like, oh, this is so spot on. But it was just such a beautiful read.
for someone who might feel like that in their own lives. So, yeah, Maggie, thank you from all of the eldest daughters out there all around the world who say, I'm fine all the time. I think we will really appreciate Good Hands and Jude. Jude's special version of it. So
Yes.
tell us a little bit about him as a character and what you love about him.
This was the first time that I've really written a morally gray leading character. And I didn't want to deviate too far from what I love doing, which is small town romance and male leads who love to be caregivers and, that type of archetype. But I wanted him to have a little bit of an edge, but, really at his core, he is still a Maggie Gates hero. He kind of falls in line with the rest of my very swoony men. But what I love about him is that he is so self-reflective and he is very self-aware of how people perceive him, how he wants to be perceived in certain situations and how that works for him, but that he also recognizes the growth that he needs to take in his own life to really take charge and get to where he wants to go with that. And I think with Amelia, she is the first time that he has really had something to fight for rather than just himself. Because much like Amelia, he will continue to deny himself and deny what he wants in life. But when he gets to fight for her because he recognizes that she is just full of this goodness and beauty and how sacrificially she loves her brother because he clocks the situation from the get-go. He has already stalked her. He, has already been inside the apartment and knows exactly who she is and what she's up to. But he also knows why she's doing it. And I think that speaks very deeply to him. He has a military background. He's a former Navy SEAL. And so he is used to this brotherhood and this team mentality. And I think at the heart of it, that's what a great relationship is. And so when he gets to build that with Amelia, he is right in his element and he knows how to support her.
Well, one of the words you used was perception. Like he knows how he's perceived. And there is a theme of hidden identity throughout this book where people have different identities and personas that they take on given the moment. So, without giving too much away, it was interesting that there's a parallel process going on. It's not just one person. And I kind of wanted to touch on Amelia for a second because Jude adores her. I'm not giving anything away. He absolutely loves her. This guy is going to adore this person and for all the things she is at her core. But when we meet Amelia, she's actually taking on a lot of different personas to try to get this thing done. And she's dressing differently, acting differently, making up stories, doing all of these things, almost like cosplaying this other life she could be having. So let's just touch on that for a second of trying to connect and kind of like show up for people and show up for yourself and see and be seen when you're also pivoting back and forth between these different masks that you're putting on. Yeah, I just kind of want to drop into that space. I thought it was interesting that they were both kind of navigating that.
One of my favorite things to do lately, I've done it in quite a few books, is to write all these parallels where you see, the two main characters kind of doing the same thing at the same time, just in different ways to, fulfill their own needs. So with Amelia, she, kind of knows I'm acting a little seedy here, trying to count cards. The casino's not going to like that very much. I'm not going to use my real name. And so she has this persona, as you mentioned, when she goes to count cards and, trying to win all this money playing blackjack. But then she pulls back and, she's got to immediately leave that at the door and go be her coworker as they're, wrapping up the semester at the university she teaches at. She is the friend who texts first, who makes the dinner reservation, who sets up, when we're all going to hang out, because like we talked about previously, everybody wants to have a village, nobody wants to be a villager. And so she is that. So she is trying to be all things for all people. She is trying to be the sister that her brother needs. And throughout all of this, she's going, once this is over, I'm going to have a beach vacation. I'm going to get an umbrella drink. I'm going to have a bikini on. And you know what? We're just going to relax. And I think that is the common theme for her through
Yeah.
probably the first like third of the book of going, once this is over, I'm going to enjoy myself. Once we get through this season, once things stop being busy or dangerous or hectic, then I'm going to prioritize myself. And how often we do that in our own lives. I say it all the time. I'm like, it's a really busy time, but after next week it'll be less busy, and then that never comes. I've been saying I'm going to go get a massage for about 6 months now. Hasn't happened yet. Um and then sometimes it takes a Jude coming into our lives and kidnapping us and taking us out of it to realize nothing is ever that serious and that you should prioritize yourself. Not to go off on a tangent, one of the things that I was thinking about a lot for this book was this line that kind of happens at the beginning, where she's a little bit in her feelings and she's thinking like, nobody is the one texting to set up plans. I'm cleaning up after my brother. What would happen if I just disappeared? And then she does. And I often think like, what would happen if I disappeared? What are the things that are actually going to be in dire need? My family needs to be taken care of. I need to be taken care of. My dog needs to be taken care of. Everything else is not that important. And it was a reality check for me of, if I disappeared, what would be critically important? And those are the things that I need to prioritize in life.
Oh my God. What a kind of journey that brought you on. No, because I was
Not to
thinking
get
about
too deep.
no, well, let's do it. Why not? Let's just get extra weird on this podcast. No,
Yeah.
but I love that. And it is a really interesting way. And it's so funny you mentioned that, because that line really stood out to me. And I was like, oh, well, I kind of relate to that. I got sick for a while and I just like dropped off the face of the earth. And I was like, oh, and everyone's fine. Like, as long as the cat is taken care of, I think everything's okay. But it was interesting. It's another interesting perspective to view your life through, of like what is important, or all the things that I think I have to be. And at the end of the day, you can be released from that a little bit. I think one of the things that really stood out to me when I was reading about this is that he likes her at her core. Like, all of the things about her that maybe make her stand out a little bit are things he just likes. And one of them is like, she's not subtle. Like, at some points he's got to be like, girl, you got to lose. They're gonna like find out. You need to not be as aggressive as you can be somewhere else like this, but you cannot be at a poker table being like this right now. But I just thought it was really interesting, and kind of what that says about someone liking us for who we are at our core without having to wear those masks and personas. And we got glimpses of that with Jude too, like throughout the story, just all of the things that were coming out about him and his like natural impulses or emotionality or his depth, all of those things that were really surprising. So I obviously adored both of these characters, truly, Maggie. And I kind of wanted to touch on the framework of the story, because it's something that as readers, we really love. Like, you touched on two things that just resonate with people so much. One, there's like a road trip involved, right? Which I want to get into that. But then there's also that close proximity. They're alone for parts of the book, like in very remote places. And I wanted to just kind of dive in, like, for you as the writer, where do you think that takes us? Just the concept of a road trip, like, what does that bring up for people? And then what comes up when we're in that close proximity with someone and it's just the two of us? We don't have any of the distractions. There's no cell phone, there's no TV. It's just you and me and the crazy thoughts in our heads.
I love a road trip romance for so many reasons. My editors would 100% disagree with me because I love writing it because I love road trips myself. But then when it comes to like handing the book off, we have just these back and forth discussions of like, okay, but does it actually take this long to get from here to here? What about traffic? But we think they're driving at this time of day. And so logistically, they're not the easiest books to write, but they're so much fun because I think with road trips, there's a sense of nostalgia, there's a sense of simplicity where it's just you and another person in a vehicle listening to the radio and eating something from a gas station. And how beautiful that is, when we strip away all the things that we think we need in our lives and then you just get to spend time with a person. For Amelia, it's not quite as fun because she is waking up from being drugged and doesn't realize what's happening and 100% is being kidnapped. And so she is trying to be strategic about this. She has been playing all of these games of blackjack for the last week trying to win this money. And so when Jude has to kidnap her, she immediately goes into like, all right, let's work this like a game. It's strategy. We're going to figure this out because if I jump out of the car right now, it's not going to do anyone any good. And so it brings in a lot of the forced proximity trope where they are forced to communicate, they're forced to be in each other's space. You're in a very cramped space. And I think that there's a lot of bonding that happens there. And one of my favorite moments is he has to stop for gas. She tries to escape at the gas station. He catches her. They have this banter and back and forth. And finally, she's like, okay, I'll go with you. And then she jumps out of the car again.
Yeah.
And then, which my girl, Amelia, like, I love her. She's so sassy. And she kind of, holds him to the fire a little bit. And she's like, if you treat me like a hostage, I will act like a hostage. So either you can trust me or you can treat me like a hostage, your choice. And I think that is such a good analogy for everything that we've already talked about in relationships of like, either we can work together or we can act like we don't need each other and we're going to keep going in these different directions. And so, Jude has to decide to compromise, what he's thinking of and his priorities of keeping her safe, getting far away, and actually communicate with her. And so they are forced to sort of develop these good relationship habits.
So, you and I have lightly touched on the fact that he kidnaps her multiple times. We brought this up, right? And we're kind of glazing over it because, we know the whole story. We know the arc that they go on. But for anyone who's listening, the story is titled Good Hands. And one of the themes that I felt came up in the book as we're talking about kidnapping was being very safe and held by another person. And I wanted to touch on that, even though it might not make sense in this context, but we very much feel like Jude very much took care of her, prioritized her, all of those things. But why is that so important for you to put on the page? That concept of caregiving and safety in relationships, because it's a through line in so many of your stories. And it really does stand out. So much so that our main female character does feel safe with him in this very unsafe situation. So can we kind of drop into that for a moment?
Yeah. I think with Amelia specifically, there's a moment mid kidnapping where he kind of levels with her and he's like, you're not the only person here with something to lose. Now they're after me too. And so he kind of lays it out there and it's like, yeah, I kidnapped you to keep you safe, but they're going to kill me too. And so now the stakes are really high for everybody. And I think when she recognized that level of sacrificial love. They don't want to call it love this early, but that's what it is. He's willing to sacrifice himself for her. How powerful that is. And it, kind of in some aspects makes her think you have ulterior motives because no one has ever just looked after her or prioritized her. But then on the other hand, it makes her trust him because she recognizes, in a very practical sense, there is mutually assured destruction if one of them kind of goes off the rails, but also that they're in this together now and the stakes are high for everybody. I think when we look at our own lives and our own relationships, to me, that like acts of service, that is my love language. That's how I receive love the most. And so when I look at all of the types of heroes that I write specifically, they are caregivers, they are acts of service people. They usually have one or two very large declarations of verbal love, but to me, actions speak louder than words. And so I love writing those characters who just constantly show love through their actions, through their priorities. And I think that that's how I receive it as a reader. That's how I receive it as, a partner with my husband. And I think that for a lot of other people, that's how they receive it as well.
Yeah, definitely. Well, you mentioned something about the two of them being in love, and this is something that along with the kidnapping, like it's very hard for both of them to sort of come to terms with in the moment of like, hey, there are very clear and obvious feelings here. Because I feel like that's a pretty universal experience, not like the kidnapping and the love, but like feelings, right? Like the inconvenient feelings that simply won't go away. And it could be about anything, right? Like it could be intuition, it could be about a job, a partner, like anything. But let's touch on that for a second. Like what you feel like you've learned either in writing these characters in your own life, but just like about listening to that voice that will not stop urging you or calling you.
I love calling it inconvenient feelings because, sometimes they're just a pain and we want them to go away because we're really comfortable with the status quo. Even if things aren't great, they're predictable. It's the devil you know versus the devil you don't. And the idea of change is really scary for a lot of people. I do not like change. I like predictability. And so when I'm often confronted with possibilities of this could be really great or it could be really terrible, I would rather just, risk not having the great thing just to stay safe and to, maintain the status quo and what I know and what's comfortable. But that's not how you grow. And so I think that you have to be willing to sacrifice predictability for the possibility of life being really good or falling in love or the job working out. And, I'm preaching to the choir here because that's a hard thing to sort of grapple with. The unknown is so scary, but I feel like I would rather deal with a lot of scary feelings and a lot of anxiety, which is not fun for anybody, but, rather than regret.
Can we get a little personal for a second? And if you don't want to talk about
Always.
this, we won't. Okay. I'm thinking of your author career as a whole, right? Like I'm taking a step
Mhm.
back and I'm looking at it and I'm thinking about this topic that you're bringing up, which I think is really relatable. What would you say to you the night before you published your first book, specifically about this? Of like, you have no idea what's like you today versus you that night. Like, what would you have said to that person about not staying small in the predictability and allowing for change? And I know you've had good and bad changes in this journey.
Yeah. I'll be honest, I think I would kind of stand in the corner and just, like, quietly, put my hands over my mouth and, cross my fingers because I know what's gonna happen over the next 5 or 6 years. There was such a blissful ignorance when I published my first book. If I was gonna say anything, it's like, "Girl, don't do it. Edit it one more time." It needs a little more work, but in, like, the grand scheme of things, there was such a ignorance is bliss type take on it, and as I look back now, I'm like, "Why did I?" The first book I ever wrote was military romance. It had a 3rd act breakup. It had, a little bit of other women drama, like, all the things that readers say that they don't like. I had no idea people didn't like that. I love it, and I just wrote what I wanted to write, and then I wrote a 6-book series that you cannot read out of order that had, all of these tropes and surprise pregnancy and, again, all these things that people like. I was just writing because I loved it. And I look back now and I'm like, I would not do that. I would be terrified to do that. And sometimes it's just blissful to think back, oh, what a magical time that was. But I think if I could tell myself anything, it would just be to let go. Um, One of the things that I really, have done some self work on over the last couple months, especially as we've been bringing this book to publication. I've been very open about the fact that I write under a pseudonym. And so when I first started writing, I knew I wanted that privacy. I wanted those boundaries and barriers. And I did not want my family or my real life circles to know that I was writing. And now some of them know. And, that's kind of been fun as a slow progression. But for about 4 years, nobody knew. And what I noticed was I had stopped posting on my personal social media accounts because it, just got to be a lot. I was trying to build up my author platforms. I moved, so I wasn't near, friends circles, and so I kind of, had to make new friends. A lot of my friends that I had grown up with, they were in their own different phases of life, and so we had kind of lost contact, and nobody noticed. Nobody, asked, "Hey, what are you doing for work now? Hey, are you still making wedding cakes? What are you doing?" But everybody is so busy and caught up in their own lives that nobody asked. And whenever readers find out, I'm very open about this, that my family for a long time didn't know. Many of them still don't know that I'm an author. They just go, "Oh my gosh, how did they not find out?" And it comes down to nobody asked. And I think, tying this back into the story and what Amelia goes through is what would happen if you disappeared? And that was exactly my experience, which is I created this new persona so that I could write books, and nobody asked. And for a long time, that was a very difficult thing to grapple with. I would cry on every book release because I was like, wow, I did this thing and it's so cool, but I had nobody to celebrate it with. And the beautiful thing is, now I'm part of this amazing community and have so many friends, and it's fantastic. But just like Amelia in this story, you kind of realize like what's important, and you can kind of shirk off the things that are no longer priorities, or the people who no longer invest in your life or you invest in theirs. Because I'll be the first to say that, the phone works both ways. And as much as people didn't ask about me, I didn't ask about them either. And so you really do get to step back and look at everything that you have in your life and decide what you want to keep and what really matters to you. And with Amelia and Jude, she recognized family is my priority, this man who loves me, and I'm his priority. I love my job, and everything else, none of that really matters.
Oh my God. I'm loving this
Sorry, that was a lot.
conversation. No, this is so good. No, you're just bringing up a lot, and I want to stay focused on you and not turn this into a therapy session for me. So,
Well, hey, we can have therapy.
we can have therapy. It's fine. The cat is here. It's all good. We can have a good discussion. No, but I was thinking about that, and it was interesting to also very subtly read about the message that you're putting in there is also like when you get to step back from all the things you think you're supposed to be doing or you should be doing, or all of that energy of like pouring from the empty cup. And what happened? Her hands were empty and she could receive something completely new because she wasn't trying to hold everything and everyone and like be the perfect friend and the perfect colleague and the perfect sister. She just got to be perfectly Amelia, like herself.
That's the perfect way to put it.
Oh, thanks. But that's how I felt. I was reading it and I was like, yeah, she got to just like, drop everything that had sort of been weighing her down. And you can always go back and pick it up. So I don't want anyone listening to hear me say that and think I'm
Yeah.
like, oh yeah, just get rid of all your friends and family.
And I think that's something
Yeah.
that she does grapple with at the book.
Yeah.
You see her coworker, Jake, who is kind of into her and she just doesn't reciprocate, but they have it out a little bit. And you recognize that sometimes you need to reset those friendships. You
Yeah.
need to reset those relationships and say, hey, this is where I'm at now. Where we are in our friendship, we're just kind of continually reminiscing instead of creating new memories and growing together. And that sort of little side piece of the book and that relationship with her coworker, I think is really important because like you said, you can always come back to
Yeah.
those friendships. But I think that the honesty of, hey, we're not in the same place in life anymore, and that's okay.
Well, I think this book also invites people along those lines to almost meet yourself again, the same way you're meeting the people in your life again, the same way you would meet a stranger or a kidnapper, right? Like you're meeting them for the first time and you're getting to know them. But I think that that's something we're not really we're just not really told. It's not talked about that throughout your life you get to meet yourself again and you're not stuck. You are dynamic. You can change. It's actually really healthy to grow, change, and it doesn't mean that persona is gone forever. It means like it's in your catalog. You can always pull it out of the closet again. Like that's part of you forever, but you are allowed to be expansive, right? Like you said something about like, oh, making cakes, like, right? Like that's still a part of you. That's still there, but you're also giving yourself the freedom to explore and grow, maybe fail, maybe succeed and see where that takes you. And I feel like so often that's at the heart of some of these stories is like, yes, like there's romance in there. And we're definitely going to touch on that because these two were so cute. But like, there's also that part of the romance of yourself and your life, which is so important. And I mean, I'm in my 40s. I look back at myself in my 20s and I just really, at 23, I thought it was all over. Do you know what I mean? Right. And
Yes.
at 29, I felt the same thing. And that is not true for anyone listening. I just want to be very clear. If you are younger than me, which everyone is younger than me, like life continues to evolve. Like it does change. You do get opportunities to grow. There's always intersections. They're not brick walls. And so
Yes.
that sort of came up in this book where someone who could have said, this is my life. It's very regimented. It's like this is how it's going to be. And like it gets blown apart. So, Maggie, let's talk about their romance because there was something about the two of them that I just like, it was not innocent. So let's just get that out of the way. But there was like an innocence about it in some way. Like it was just like so pure and beautiful. I don't even know what to say about it. I just kind of want to give you the floor. When you were writing them and their chemistry, their banter, like everything, I don't know what was coming to the surface for you.
When I started thinking about how I wanted them to fall in love, I knew, he's going to kidnap her. They're going to go on the run and then hide in this safe house in the middle of West Virginia in the woods. There's not much to do, especially when you just have to stay inside. And you have these two very attractive people who have chemistry. What could they possibly get up to? And with Amelia, we kind of dive into the fact that she's a virgin. She has just decided, I'm not interested. And it's, really interesting to me. I've written a virgin romance once before this. The heroine was very young, it was an age gap, and her life had kind of been delayed because of chronic illness. And so she was just like, you know what? I want to jump in. I want to experience all the things that I haven't been able to experience thus far. With Amelia, that's not necessarily the case. She just decided, I'm not into it. I don't feel, this romantic attraction. Why would I waste my time? And then with Jude, the chemistry is there. There's fireworks. Really from the first time that they lay eyes on each other, they are both so into it. And I think that really, sets the pace for the romance is just this instant attraction to somebody you're not supposed to be attracted to. And honestly, that makes it all the more delicious. But once, they really get into the story and they are thrown together under these horrible circumstances, the trust comes very quickly. And I think trust grows attraction. And so he allows her the safety to experience losing her virginity, to explore sex, to love sex. And, she's, I love that he calls her Dr. Hawthorne in bed. That's just like a little side thing.
Maggie, I was
that.
going to bring that up.
I like, oh, that's so sexy. So she's a PhD holder. She has a doctorate. She's very smart. She's very, successful for herself. She's very confident. And I love the idea of doing not a later in life, losing your virginity, but like it was never seen as a thing of like, oh, you have to get rid of this, thing holding you down. And it was just when the time is right, she was ready to explore it. And she was with the right person who really prioritized her safety and comfort. But then they just have this explosive relationship. And when everything, there's a big twist in the middle. And so when everything kind of crumbles and they have to really work their way back to each other, that is one of the things that she struggles with. It's like, I really fell in love with him. And there was this undeniable attraction. And I don't know that I will ever feel that with anybody else. And so going back to everything she feels at the beginning of the book with her coworkers, with her brother, this guilt and this burden of, wanting to love somebody, but also being really, really hurt by them. And Jude is such a great hero because he recognizes the work that he has to do to get back to where they were and to really have that happily ever after. So I feel like it's so well earned.
Oh, yeah. So I love that we got to talk about this because I was actually having this conversation with a coworker because she was asking me, why do you think that sort of like that virgin trope is a thing? Why is that like a big deal in these stories sometimes? And I was thinking about it particularly with this book because, yeah, she's like an older character, not like older. I could be her mom, but she's like an older character, right? And I was thinking about it. I was like, oh, that's such a powerful thing in stories sometimes too, because I think it's a way for people to experience something that may not have been a very positive experience for themselves and to have this beautiful experience. And I was thinking about their dynamic specifically. And she, like we said, is not subtle. So as she's talking about herself, she's like, yeah, I haven't done that. That's not something I felt. I did not want. And it wasn't this, he was just like present for it and asking her questions and interested. And I just thought it was such a gift for the reader that she gets to have this beautiful experience with this person who just wants complete presence with her and wants to make this good for her and wants to make sure that she gets to fully embody it. Like she doesn't have to be in her head. She can be in her body. She can be present, like just all of these things. And I just thought it was so beautifully done. And yeah, I just really, really loved their love story. And so let's get some information from you about Good Hands. Can you just tell us when this is coming out, where this is available, and what we can expect?
So this is Good Hands. It will be out on June 2nd on Amazon for the print edition, on Kindle and Kindle Unlimited for the ebook, and the week after release, exclusively on Audible. We have two incredible narrators bringing Jude and Amelia to life. Jude is played by Liam Courtwright, and Amelia is played by Nikki Gray, and both of them are absolutely incredible. And I cannot wait to hear this in my ears as well. The ebook is available for pre order on Amazon, and so pre order it now.
Oh, incredible. And I will make sure to anyone listening that there are links in the show notes. And I would highly encourage you to pre order Good Hands. I did that as well. Even though I got the art copy, I definitely pre ordered. So, Maggie, okay, now that we've covered Good Hands, we are in the Maggie Gates 2026-2027 sprint. So, I would love to know what else is going on in your universe. Bring us up to speed.
So, Good Hands will be out June 2nd, but very shortly after that, on September 15th, I will have a traditionally published release of my next cowboy romance series. This is book one. It's called Blue Jean Summer, and it kicks off the Wilder Estate series, which I believe I'm going to be back on here talking about with you. And I cannot wait to dive into that one. I've got a lot of thoughts already. But Blue Jean Summer is published by Berkeley Publishing, and so it will be available in bookstores near you as well as wherever you listen to audiobooks or read your ebooks. And that is a marriage of convenience cowboy romance. And it is such a soft love story where I think Good Hands brings a little bit of an edge. Blue Jean Summer is just very soft and dreamy and romantic. And if you are feeling tumultuous in your life, this is going to be the place that you want to crash. And then we're going to end the year with a holiday romance, my first ever holiday romance. It's called Smoke Ring, and it will be out December 1st. And that is a fake engagement romance. And I am finishing up some edits on that one right now. And I am so in love with these two characters, and I cannot wait for you to meet them.
Oh, Maggie, I'm so excited. I can't wait till you come back and we talk about all of this. Okay, so
Yes.
for anyone listening, we're almost like spinning the dial now. For someone who's like listening to this podcast episode today and wants to dive into the Maggie Gates library, what is the book that you would point them towards today?
I would recommend starting with Dust Storm. That is book one in my Griffith Brothers Cowboy Romance series. I think it's the perfect entry point into my backlist. And if you want to hear more about it, we have a whole episode about Dust Storm. And it's one of my favorite discussions ever because I love Christian and Cassandra so much. And if you're a fan of The Parent Trap and you love Meredith Blake, Cassandra is your girl. So I would highly recommend grabbing Dust Storm.
People love Dust Storm so much that I've had other authors come on this podcast to talk about their books, and they end up talking about your book. Allie Roberts, I am referencing you. She comes on and she talked all about how she loved the Griffith Brothers series. So, Maggie, it was incredible to be able to sit down and talk to you today. I love when you come. I'm so excited about this book. I really enjoyed Good Hands, and I can't wait to talk to you again soon.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm so excited for the next time.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Love Letters and Books, a podcast for anyone who loves a good story. If you enjoyed this episode, please take a moment to follow, rate, and review this podcast on your favorite listening platform. You can find me on both Instagram and TikTok at Love Letters and Books. And if you're interested in being a guest on Love Letters and Books, suggesting your favorite author, or just want to write in an original love letter to yourself or someone else to be read on air, please send me an email at lovelettersandbookspodcast@gmail.com.